Several years ago, I was watching a live news report, and the anchor was reporting from a rooftop in a country that was in the middle of war. And as he was reporting, blasts and explosions lit up the sky all around him. In fact, at one point as he was talking, he had to duck off camera to avoid gunfire. It was wild to watch. And he kept standing there trying to do his job as the conflict swirled around him. But he kept his calm, kept it together and professional. But no doubt, on the inside, he was probably freaking out. Who wouldn't? For the past few weeks, we've been talking about conflict and how often conflict feels like a battlefield. But in this series, our goal is to give you the tools to move beyond the battlefield and navigate conflict well. We've talked about how to fight for the relationships that matter. We've talked about how to handle conflict when we find ourselves in a battle with someone else. But what we're going to talk about today is a different kind of conflict. It's the kind of conflict that happens on a battlefield that has nothing to do with us, which sounds great, right? If there's conflict and we're not in it, that doesn't sound so bad. But this can actually be more stressful, especially when, like that anchor, we are caught in the crossfire. I grew up in a very vocal family. We were and still are pretty loud. We laugh loudly, we tell stories loudly, we yell, "I love you," loudly. And you guessed it, we argue loudly. As a kid, even though I knew this about my family, I remember feeling awkward if I got caught in the middle of a fight between my parents, because I knew even if you're just a bystander in a conflict, there's still the possibility of getting hurt. It's no different now that I'm an adult. Conflict with a coworker doesn't just affect the two of us, everyone on the team becomes a bystander. Or I see it with friends. If two friends in the same circle are having a problem, the rest of us feel that tension. And this bystander tension has the tendency to follow us around. We take it from home to work, to weekend events, to time with a friend, and all of a sudden, we're feeling the effects of conflict everywhere we go. Maybe you've been there too. Maybe for you, even at this age, it's still your parents fighting. And when you're around, it's hard not to step in. Or maybe it's two of your siblings who just can't get along, and you're caught in the crossfire and the rest of your family is too. And it makes those dynamics super stressful. Or maybe there's a conflict at work. Your boss is incredibly challenging to work with. And while you've figured out how to navigate that relationship, a lot of your coworkers have not. And as a result, team meetings always bring a certain level of anxiety. When conflict happens around us, even if it has nothing to do with us, it affects us. It makes us feel uneasy, tense. It can keep us up all night or make us feel on edge all day. In other words, we are not at peace. In fact, fighting around us is often more stressful than fights we're directly involved in because we have no control about it. We can't just apologize and make it go away. We can't just forgive someone and call it a truce. We're stuck. So what do you do when you're caught in the crossfire of a battle you have no control over? Even if we've never thought about it before, most of us tend to respond to these outside conflicts in two ways. First, we may try to fix it, even if it has nothing to do with us. Even if we aren't a part of the problem, we take on the responsibility of solving it. We feel emotionally involved and emotionally accountable for making sure things are made right. And for some of us, that means trying to save someone else's friendship or relationship for them. And for others, it means feeling the weight of saving our parents' or siblings' marriage, even though we have no idea how to do that. And while we may have great intentions, we usually don't end up fixing anything. We just end up being exhausted. Or secondly, we may try to flee from it. For a lot of us, our response to conflict is to flee, to get out of there. Being around conflict makes us anxious, uncomfortable, and stressed out. So we'll do whatever we have to do to get as far away from it as possible. We'll leave the house or leave the room. We throw ourselves into sports, into work, into television, or into any other activity that will distract us. We pop in our earbuds to tune out the world. We will do whatever we can to think about something else. The problem with these two approaches is that they don't typically relieve the conflict. They may help temporarily, but in the long run, we need a better, more effective solution. So as we said earlier in this series, conflict is part of being human. It goes back to the very beginning of the Bible. In the book of Genesis, we read about Cain and Abel, two brothers whose conflict resulted in one killing the other. From there, it just escalated to conflicts between families, conflicts between tribes, conflicts between nations, and every time a battle started, you could be sure of one thing: more people were affected by the battle than just the people who started the fight. Fast forward a few thousand years to when Jesus walked the earth. Many of his followers believed that as the Messiah, Jesus was going to put an end to all conflict and finally bring peace to the nations. After all, it was foretold that the Messiah would be the Prince of Peace. As an oppressed nation, the Jewish people wanted someone to finally bring that peace. And when Jesus stepped into the scene during a time when rulers were fighting other rulers, the people were hoping for the promised Messiah to come and put an end to all the battles. And it isn't that Jesus didn't bring peace, because he did, but it took time for his followers to understand what that peace would actually look like. People were angry at Jesus. They didn't like his messaging. They didn't like what he stood for, so they killed him. After Jesus' death and resurrection, his friends were going to be caught in the middle of a battle they couldn't even imagine. The people who were angry at Jesus and were the mouthpieces for his death would ultimately try to kill his followers too. And one night, as Jesus and his closest followers were having dinner, Jesus began to prepare them for the battlefields that would lay ahead. Knowing this was one of the last times he would get to talk with them, Jesus gave this instruction: "Peace I leave with you. My peace I give you. I do not give to you as the world gives. Do not let your hearts be troubled, and do not be afraid." Now, Jesus' followers couldn't fully understand what he was talking about. Jesus' arrest and death were mere hours away, and his disciples had trouble grasping the fact that he was leaving them. But in the chaos that followed his death, I'm sure they recalled Jesus' words over and over. And what Jesus said then is still true today. He said, when there's conflict swirling around us and we're stressed or afraid, we don't have to search for peace. He's already given it to us. And it's not the world's idealized version of peace where life is conflict-free. It's better. It's a peace that exists no matter what's happening around us. But this can be hard to understand because it's not something that's tangible. It's a peace that's steady and unchanging because it's tied to our relationship with Christ and his steady and unchanging nature. It's a peace that the world can't take away from us. It's a peace anchored in the truth of who God is. It's a peace knowing that God sees us, he hears us, and is in control of all things and is never caught off guard when things happen. It's a peace that tells us our identity, our value, and our worth are secure no matter what's happening around us. When fixing and fleeing won't work, Jesus promises that his Spirit can step in and quiet the chaos in us, around us, no matter what's going on. That's why Jesus was able to say this: "Do not let your heart be troubled, and do not be afraid." But how do we do that? How can we not be troubled by conflict? By not being anxious about the future or worried about what will happen next? By not focusing on the future at all? By instead choosing to fight for our peace right now? And maybe that sounds like an impossible command. It sounds potentially naive, unrealistic. How are we supposed to control our worry or our fear? But Jesus is not saying to pretend like things are perfect. Instead, he's saying control what you can. You can't control conflict, but you can control yourself. You can control what you're focusing on. You can choose to focus on the conflict, or you can choose to focus on trusting God to get you through it. Don't find peace in a conflict's resolution, but find peace in the fact that God has promised to be with you through anything, through any battlefield. You can't control conflict, but you can control yourself. So as Jesus prepared for his death and resurrection, he also knew that his friends were about to face conflict from every angle. And Jesus wanted them to remember that the battle on the outside didn't have to affect how they felt on the inside. He wanted his disciples to be at peace, even when it didn't make sense to the rest of the world. And thankfully, Jesus offers that same peace to us. That means you can be at peace on the inside when people who are close to you are at war, or when you're coming home and you feel overwhelmingly stressed, or when you're going to work and it evokes feelings of anxiety, or when your friends fight like they're back in middle school, or when you see people arguing on social media. Of course, this is easier said than done, right? How do we really and truly reach for the peace of Jesus when there's conflict in our lives? Well, there are a number of ways, but here are two. First, you can pray. You can pray for peace. If you want inner peace, connect to the one who gives it to you. Talk to God. Be honest with your feelings. Be honest with your thoughts. Nothing will take him by surprise. He doesn't always make the conflict immediately disappear, but he does promise to give us a peace that surpasses all understanding. Your prayer can be as simple as saying, God, please calm me on the inside no matter what's happening on the outside. And second, you can take a break. When you're stuck on a battlefield you didn't sign up for, take a break from worrying about it. And instead choose to trust that God can handle it while you're not thinking about it. This doesn't mean that you ignore every problem around you, but you can avoid fixating on it. Don't let your stressful thoughts spiral out of control. Instead, fight for peace on the inside by reminding yourself that God is with you and can be trusted to handle any and all situations. Now, I get it. Praying for peace, trusting God can sound like very simple, very pat answers, but they work. And they work because they're rooted in the character of God. God is good and he always has been good. He always comes through on his promises, and he has promised us lots of things, including that he is always with us and that he will give us peace. If you're a Christian, praying for peace on the inside, it's not just a helpful suggestion. It's also an expression of what you believe to be true about God. God's not watching you to grade your performance on how well you trust him, but praying for peace and counting on him to actually provide it is a great way to exercise your faith muscle. And your faith means so much to him. So as we end this series, remember, as long as your life involves other people, guess what? You're gonna experience conflict. And whether you're involved in it or not, whether the conflict is your fault or not, you always have a choice in how you respond. You can't control conflict, but you can control yourself. You can choose to fight. Fight for someone, fight for a relationship, and fight for peace. As we conclude the series, think about one battle in your life right now. Is there a relationship that has conflict? And what can you do to move beyond it? Maybe that means apologizing. Maybe it means forgiving. Maybe it just means trusting that God is God and he sees all, he knows all, and is working, even though it may not feel like it. Trusting that he will take care of both the situation and you. No matter what it is, he is with you now, and he will be long after the battle is over.